visualization should answer the question, what are the differences in average net margin, that is sales price minus cost plus labor cost, between makes? And are there differences within the makes by country? To create a visualization for this question, we first need to create a so-called calculated value net margin. You can create a calculated value from the Analysis tab at the top, and clicking the Create Calculated Field option will bring up a new window. So to calculate the net margin, we need to take the sales price and subtract cost plus labor cost. So I'm going to first change the name of this new field to net margin, and then I'm going to type in open bracket S, and you see that when I do that, I get a number of different options. Clicking on the required field, in this case sales price, will then add sales price to the calculation. And it's in general preferable to select fields rather than type them, as this minimizes the chances of adding mistakes to the calculation. So we can now complete the calculation. We need to subtract cost plus labor cost. You will notice that if you make a mistake, Tableau will tell you whether there is a mistake, the calculation is not valid. If it is valid, then you know that we are okay. So I'm going to accept this okay, and you see that net margin has now been added to the measures on the cars. The second step in creating the appropriate visualization is to realize that, as was the case in the previous visualization, the hierarchical nature of the question calls for a drill down. However, whereas the drill down in the previous visualization was from country to make, in this visualization the drill down is from make to country. You will have noticed that when we created the hierarchy in the previous exercise, the dimensions country name and make are no longer listed independently of the hierarchy that they occur in. We could change the order in which they appear in the hierarchy, but that would mean that the hierarchy that we used to create the drill down in the previous exercise is no longer correct. The solution is to create copies of the dimensions and use those copies to create the new hierarchy. To create a copy, click on the country dimension and then simply say duplicate. You see it gets added to customers again, and we can then do the same with make to have it added to the cars sheet. And now we can create the hierarchy the same way, but rather than dropping make onto country, we're now going to drop country onto make. And we probably want to rename this new hierarchy, so something like make to country, and say OK. And you see we now have this hierarchy here as well. So let's create a new sheet and add this make to country to the columns shelf, and then we add net margin to the row shelf. Again, by default, Tableau will use sum as the aggregation method. We know how to change this, so we do that now, average. And this looks okay until we drill down to the next level. So we go from make to country, and you see that this null appears again. And the solution is the same as it was before. We take the country copy, drag that into filters, deselect null, and say OK. And now we're good in that null no longer appears. And now what we can do is rename the visualization and give it a more meaningful name, like net margin by make and country. And we'll save this. And that completes the third visualization.